You used my executive access, killed 3 security cameras on the 42nd floor, and redirected 2 guards away from a restricted corridor. Adrian Cross slid the incident report across his desk. Tell me why that is not betrayal. Noah Bennett looked down at the timestamps and felt something inside him go very still. Every line was accurate. His access code, his authorization, his decision. Nothing on the page was fabricated, which made defending himself harder than calling the accusation false. I did it, Noah said. Adrian's expression barely changed. That was worse than anger. You're admitting it. I'm admitting the actions. Then explain the motive. Noah lifted his eyes. There was an answer. A few sentences could probably save his position. But explaining why those cameras had gone dark would mean explaining what the cameras would otherwise have captured, who had been moving through that corridor, and why Noah had decided privacy mattered more than protocol. The protection would become exposure the moment he used it as evidence of his own innocence. I can't give you the full context, he said. Adrian's jaw tightened. Security found your authorization attached to every override. No request. No emergency note. No secondary approval. You deliberately created a blind zone around my executive floor. Yes. And when I ask why, you tell me you can't explain. Not without breaking the reason I did it. Adrian pushed away from the desk. Effective immediately, your employment is terminated for breach of executive security and violation of confidential access protocols. The words landed with frightening calm. Noah had known the possibility existed when he walked in. Hearing it still felt like the floor shifted under him. Your credentials will be disabled before you leave this floor. You will return your access badge and company devices to security. The incident will undergo formal review. Noah nodded once. Understood. Something flickered across Adrian's face. Perhaps he had expected protest. That's all you have to say? Noah looked at the man whose privacy he had chosen over his own safety and felt the old instinct to make himself useful one. Last time. Explain enough. Protect him better. Make the damage easier for everyone except himself. He let the instinct pass. Would anything I say without the details change your decision? Adrian did not answer immediately. That was answer enough. Noah reached for the black access badge clipped inside his jacket and placed it beside the report. For years, that badge had opened doors before anyone asked his name. Now it looked like evidence too. You could appeal, Adrian said. The review may allow additional context. If I could give that context without violating why I acted, I would have given it to you already. Adrian's eyes hardened. You are choosing this. Noah met his gaze. I'm choosing not to protect myself by exposing someone else. Adrian paused. Who? Noah's fingers tightened once against the edge of the desk. There it was, the question that could save him. He could answer it, and perhaps watch suspicion collapse. He could also turn a private moment into evidence, convert another person's vulnerability into his defense, and make the protection meaningless. I'm not telling you. Adrian's expression closed completely. Then we're done. Noah picked up nothing except his coat. His laptop stayed. His phone stayed. The badge remained between them. When he reached the office door, the reader beside it flashed red before he even touched the handle. Access revoked. Fast, final, efficient. Behind him, Adrian said, If you didn't betray me, Noah, then why are you making it impossible for me to believe you? Noah stopped. For one dangerous moment, he wanted to turn around and tell him everything. Instead, he looked back and said, maybe because belief was never supposed to require me to sacrifice someone else first. Then he left. By the time the elevator reached the lobby, Noah was no longer Adrian Cross's executive employee. He had lost his access, his position, and the trust he had once believed mattered more than either. But he had not exposed the person he had protected. Upstairs, beside a surrendered badge and a report full of facts, Adrian was left with one question the evidence could not answer. What could possibly matter enough for Noah to accept? Looking guilty rather than name the person he had been protecting? By the time Noah reached the lobby, his name no longer opened anything. His email account was disabled before the elevator doors did. His calendar disappeared from his phone. The security gate that had recognized him every morning for 3 years showed only a red light. The firing had already become infrastructure. A security officer handed him a small envelope containing the few personal items from his desk that were not company property. HR will send the formal termination documents to your home address, Mr. Bennett. And the review? Automatic after any executive-level breach. You'll be contacted if they need a statement. Noah nodded. He could already imagine the questions. Describe your actions. Identify all affected parties. Provide complete context. Every path would end at the same place. Adrian had reached upstairs. Who were you protecting? Noah stepped outside. For years, his mornings had begun with Adrian's schedule and ended when the last executive issue had been contained. Now there was nothing waiting for him at 6 the next morning. The loss hurt, but beneath it sat an uncomfortable trace of relief. No one could require loyalty from him tonight, while questioning what loyalty meant. His personal phone rang before he reached the corner. HR, Mr. Bennett, you have the right to submit a written appeal before the investigation closes. If there was privileged context you could not provide during the termination meeting, the appeal process allows confidential disclosure to the review panel. Noah stopped walking. Confidential sounded safe until he pictured what it actually meant. More people, a written record, copies, questions. He had created the blind zone precisely so there would be no permanent corporate record of what happened inside it. I won't be filing an appeal. You're declining without reviewing the disclosure protections? Yes. A pause. This could affect how the termination is categorized in your employment record. There was the real cost. A betrayal finding could follow him into another executive position. He could protect his future now by giving the company what it wanted, someone else's privacy in exchange for his reputation. I understand. Please record that I'm declining. He ended the call. Upstairs, silence had cost Noah his job. Down here, it was beginning to cost him whatever came after it too. That evening, the termination packet arrived at his apartment. Noah set it unopened on the kitchen table and noticed how quiet the room was without Adrian's name lighting up his phone. Adrian could not reach him through work anymore. Noah did not have to anticipate what Adrian needed. The absence hurt, but it belonged entirely to him. At Cross Meridian, the automatic security review continued. Every executive-level override triggered a trace of access changes, data movement, downloads, external transfers, device activity, and attempts to carry protected information beyond the secured network. The first report reached Adrian shortly before midnight. He opened it expecting confirmation of what he had already decided. Noah had used executive credentials without authorization. The cameras had gone dark. The guards had been redirected. Those facts remained. But the rest of the report was unexpectedly thin. No confidential files had been downloaded. No protected data had been transferred outside the company. No external device had connected during the security gap. No client list, financial record, executive document, or private communication had moved under Noah's credentials. Adrian read the summary twice. None of it proved Noah innocent. A betrayal did not always require theft, but it removed the simplest motive. Noah had gained nothing from the breach. At the bottom of the report, the review team had added one routine line. Further analysis required to determine operational purpose of access changes. Adrian stared at it. Until then, he had been asking why Noah would betray him. Now the question changed. If Noah had taken nothing, gained nothing, and still refused to save himself by explaining, then what exactly had those dark cameras and redirected guards been meant to accomplish? Adrian was still staring at the words operational purpose when the next layer of the security review arrived. He expected more access logs and procedural language confirming that Noah had crossed lines he had no authority to cross. Instead, the report contained a timeline of movement. At 6:42 p.m., Noah disabled cameras covering the East Executive Corridor. At 6:44, he redirected the two guards assigned to the private elevators. At 6:46, Adrian himself entered the 42nd floor from the West elevator. Adrian stopped there. The time was familiar, but the memory attached to it was not. He remembered a late evening, a private corridor, and a period of time he had never wanted documented clearly. The rest came only as broken impressions, pressure behind his eyes, Noah's voice somewhere nearby, the urgent need to get out of sight. Nothing clean enough to explain what Noah had done. Adrian continued reading. At 6:47, Noah used his access to lock two interior doors that normally remained open during business hours. At 6:49, a cleaning crew entered the floor from the North Service corridor. Noah redirected them to another level. At 6:51, an executive assistant from finance requested access to the same hallway. Noah denied it. At 6:53, Adrian's private elevator was called manually. The request was canceled under Noah's credentials. None of those actions had moved information out of the company. None had created new access to Adrian's office, records, or devices. They had done something stranger. They had reduced access. Adrian pulled up the attached floor map. The security changes appeared as red markers across the executive level. He expected to see a path leading toward a server room, a restricted office, somewhere Noah might have been trying to reach unseen. There was no path. The red markers formed a rough perimeter around one location, the private corridor outside Adrian's executive suite. Adrian sat back. The betrayal theory had always assumed Noah created a blind spot so he could use it. The timeline suggested Noah had created a blind spot and then spent the entire window keeping other people away from it. Adrian called the security review desk. "Walk me through the movement pattern." The analyst hesitated only long enough to bring up the file. The system initially flagged it as a possible extraction or unauthorized access event. And now, we have no indication Mr. Bennett accessed protected files during the window. That is not what I asked. A pause. The access changes appear defensive in shape. Adrian's hand tightened around the phone. Defensive. They restrict movement toward the executive corridor. They don't open movement away from it. Toward what? Another pause. Toward the area you entered, sir. Adrian looked again at the red markers. Noah had said, "I'm choosing not to protect myself by exposing someone else." Adrian had heard that as evasion. Now the timeline made one part of it harder to dismiss. Noah had not used those 7 minutes to enter a place he should not have been. He had used them to make one place harder for everyone else to enter. Adrian ended the call and remained motionless. The pattern did not prove protection. A person could conceal something dangerous by blocking witnesses. A breach could still be a breach even without theft. Adrian had built his company by refusing to replace evidence with hope simply because he preferred the hopeful explanation. He would not start now because guilt was becoming easier than certainty. But he could no longer say the facts supported the version he had fired Noah for as cleanly as they had yesterday. He opened the complete access map and followed the incident minute by minute. Every time another employee approached the corridor, Noah pushed them away from it. Every time a security system would have increased visibility, Noah reduced it. Every action looked less like someone trying to get close to a target and more like someone trying to control who else could. The distinction unsettled him because his own memory of that evening remained incomplete. At the bottom of the review, one line identified the next required step: visual reconstruction from unaffected camera angles covering the entrances to the executive corridor. Adrian authorized immediate review. If those cameras showed Noah slipping into the blind zone to exploit whatever had happened there, the betrayal theory would survive in another form. But if they showed him standing outside it, controlling who could approach, blocking sight lines, turning people away, then Adrian would have to face a possibility he had not allowed himself to consider when he fired him. Maybe Noah had not created a breach around Adrian at all. Maybe he had created a shield. The question was, a shield around what? The first reconstructed camera angle did not show the blind corridor itself. It showed the north entrance leading toward it, captured by a camera Noah had left active because its lens never faced directly into the private passage. At 6:48 p.m., Noah appeared at the edge of the frame with his back to the corridor, watching the people who might enter it. A cleaning cart approached from the far hall. Noah stepped into its path before the employees could turn toward the executive wing. The footage had no audio, but his gesture was unmistakable. Stop. He redirected them toward the service elevator and stayed where he was. 43 seconds later, the finance assistant from the access log approached from the opposite side. Again, Noah moved first. He positioned himself between the assistant and the corridor entrance. He did not open the secured door behind him. He closed it. Adrian replayed that moment once. Next angle. The monitor shifted to a western hallway camera partly blocked by a structural column. At 6:50, someone moved near the elevator bank. Noah stepped sideways across the line between that person and the private corridor. The person changed direction. Noah remained until they were gone. No theft. No transfer. No secret meeting. Just Noah, making himself the thing people had to get past. How much of the corridor could that camera see? Adrian asked. Almost none, the analyst said. Only the approach. So we still don't know what was happening behind him. Not from this angle. Adrian looked at the frozen image. The original incident report had described the same minute as unauthorized restriction of executive access. Technically, that remained true, but the phrase no longer explained the behavior. Noah had narrowed the witnesses and then kept himself outside the very privacy gap he had created. Show me the sequence from before the cameras went dark. The analyst pulled up the final pre-override feed. Noah entered the executive floor from the main hall, looked toward the private corridor, checked the elevators, checked the camera positions, then moved quickly to the security panel. Whatever he had decided that evening, he had decided it before there was an accusation to answer, a job to save, or a reputation to protect. Adrian watched Noah glance once toward the hidden corridor and begin shutting the floor down around it. Pause. The image froze. Noah's face was partly turned away, but Adrian knew the expression. Focused, controlled, protective. If he finally allowed himself the word. The analyst shifted beside him. There's one more source. Adrian looked over. What source? A local buffer. The main network feed was interrupted during the override, but one interior threshold camera stored footage locally. It covers part of the corridor from an indirect angle. Adrian's pulse changed. Why wasn't it in the original review? Standard incident packages only pull networked footage tied to the flagged cameras. Once the movement pattern stopped looking like extraction, we expanded the search. The answer was procedural and ordinary, which made it harder to dismiss. The system had not hidden the truth. Adrian had simply made his decision before anyone had looked at the whole event from the right angle. Is the file recovered? Yes. We're syncing the timestamp now. Adrian looked again at Noah frozen on the monitor. Every surviving angle showed the same thing. Noah keeping people away from the blind corridor while refusing to use it for himself. Protection was becoming the most coherent explanation left. But the question that mattered remained unanswered. Something inside that corridor had been important enough for Noah to risk access, reputation, and eventually his job rather than place the truth into an official record. The restored camera would finally show what Noah believed was worth that cost. The restored file opened without sound. For the first 6 seconds, nothing moved inside the narrow frame. Then Adrian appeared. He recognized himself immediately, but not as the man who had walked into Noah's office the next morning, certain he understood what had happened. On the screen, Adrian's shoulders were rigid, one hand braced against the wall as he came out of the private corridor. His control was visibly failing. The physical crash he remembered only in fragments had been worse than he had allowed himself to admit. His breathing was uneven. His head stayed lowered. Every instinctive signal he normally kept locked beneath tailored suits and executive discipline was close enough to the surface that anyone passing through that hallway would have known something was wrong. Adrian stopped the footage. The missing pieces of his memory aligned with brutal clarity. The corridor, the pressure behind his eyes, Noah telling him to move. The need to disappear before anyone saw the CEO of Cross Meridian unable to hold himself upright. The security analyst looked away from the monitor without being told. Continue, Adrian said. The image moved again. Noah entered the frame from the opposite side. He saw Adrian and changed direction immediately. No hesitation. No glance toward an office. No attempt to use the empty corridor for himself. He went straight to Adrian. On screen, Noah said something the camera could not record. Adrian watched his own mouth answer, though he remembered none of the words. Then the elevator indicator at the far end of the hall lit up. Noah saw it before Adrian did. His entire posture changed. He stepped between Adrian and the open corridor, turned Adrian toward the private passage, and reached for the security panel. The first camera feed vanished seconds later. Adrian stared at the timestamp running beneath the image. 6:42, the exact beginning of the breach. The local camera continued recording from the indirect angle the network shutdown had not affected. Noah guided Adrian behind the wall where the main corridor could no longer see him. Then Noah came back out alone and closed the door. An employee appeared near the elevator bank. Noah intercepted him. Another figure approached from the service hall. Noah redirected them. When the guards started toward the corridor, Noah used Adrian's authorization to send them elsewhere. One by one, every action Adrian had listed as evidence of betrayal appeared on the screen, and one by one, its meaning reversed. The disabled cameras had not hidden Noah. They had hidden Adrian. The redirected guards had not cleared a path for Noah to enter. They had cleared the floor so no one would see Adrian struggling to remain upright. The locked doors had not protected stolen information. They had protected the man behind them. Adrian said nothing. The analyst did not either. At 6:56, after the corridor had been empty for several minutes, Noah reopened the private door. Adrian stepped out looking controlled again. Not fully recovered, but composed enough that the version of him visible to the rest of the company would remain intact. Noah stayed half a step behind him until Adrian reached the private elevator. Only after the doors closed did Noah return to the security panel and restore the systems he could restore without creating a broader incident record. Adrian watched Noah stand alone in the corridor for several seconds. The tension left his shoulders only after Adrian was gone. Then the file ended. The monitor returned to a frozen final frame, Noah facing an empty hallway. Adrian's stomach turned. He remembered Noah across the desk saying, "I'm choosing not to protect myself by exposing someone else." Adrian had demanded a name. The answer had been standing in front of him. "Restrict playback access to the minimum required for the review," Adrian said. The analyst nodded. "Yes, sir." Adrian almost laughed at the cruelty of hearing himself ask the company to protect the same privacy Noah had already lost his job protecting. For 2 days, Adrian had believed Noah created 7 minutes of blindness because he wanted freedom to betray him. The truth was almost the exact opposite. Noah had created 7 minutes in which Adrian could be weak without the company seeing it. And when Adrian later demanded an explanation, Noah had faced a simple choice. Reveal Adrian's private collapse to security, HR, investigators, and anyone required to document an appeal, or accept the accusation himself. Noah had chosen the cost. Adrian remembered his own words from the termination meeting. "You are choosing this." At the time, he had meant the firing. Now the sentence returned with another meaning. Noah had been choosing Adrian even after Adrian stopped choosing him. Adrian stood so abruptly that his chair rolled backward. He called legal and HR. The betrayal finding against Noah Bennett is withdrawn effective immediately. Correct his employment record. Amend the termination reason pending formal exoneration from intentional misconduct. And prepare reinstatement terms. He ended the call before anyone could ask why. Procedure gave him something solid to hold. He could fix the record, restore access, reverse the employment decision, make sure Noah did not carry Adrian's mistake into every future job application. Those things mattered. They were also things Adrian knew how to do because they belonged to a world where his signature changed outcomes. Then he looked at Noah frozen on the monitor and remembered the question Noah had asked before leaving. "Would anything I say, without the details, change your decision?" Adrian had not answered. He had not needed to. The footage had answered the question Adrian thought mattered most. Noah had not betrayed him. He had protected him. But that answer created a harder question immediately. Adrian could correct what the company believed about Noah. He could even offer back the exact job he had taken away. What he did not know was whether any of that could repair the moment Noah learned that 3 years of loyalty had carried less weight than 7 minutes of incomplete evidence. The first thing Adrian fixed was the record. Before sunrise, Noah's termination file no longer listed betrayal, intentional misconduct, or misuse of confidential access for personal gain. By 8, HR had sent Noah a formal correction stating that the security review had cleared him of disloyal intent. By 9, Adrian had a reinstatement package on his desk restoring Noah's salary, seniority, executive access, and every benefit he had lost. It was the kind of problem Adrian understood. A wrong decision had been made. The facts had changed. Correct the decision. Restore the position. Remove the damage. For almost an hour, the neatness of that logic felt like relief. Then Noah replied to the HR notice with 6 words. "Thank you for correcting the record. Nothing about returning." Adrian called him before he could decide whether calling was another form of pressure. Noah answered after the 4th ring. "Noah Bennett. Not Adrian. Not sir. Just his own name." "The review is complete," Adrian said. "I know." HR sent the correction. They should have sent the reinstatement terms too. A pause. They did. Adrian looked at the unsigned offer on his desk. "Then you saw that everything is restored." "Professionally." The single word stopped him. "I want to speak in person." Adrian almost added, "Come to the office." The old sentence formed automatically because that was how his world worked. He named the place, other people adjusted. He changed it before speaking. "If you're willing." Noah was quiet long enough that Adrian became aware of how much he had once relied on silence, ending in agreement. "You can come here," Noah said at last. This afternoon, when Adrian arrived at Noah's apartment, the reinstatement packet was inside a plain folder under his arm. He hated how much it resembled a solution. Noah opened the door and stepped back without warmth or hostility. Adrian entered. The footage showed everything, he said once they were seated. Noah's face tightened. "Everything. Enough. You saw what was happening to me. You cleared the floor. You shut down the cameras and redirected security so no one would see me." Noah looked down for a second. Adrian continued before he could mistake the silence for shame. "You were protecting me." "Yes." It was the first time Noah had admitted it directly. There was no satisfaction in the word. Adrian set the folder on the table between them. "Your record is cleared. The internal finding has been corrected. No future employer will receive the original termination reason, and I want you reinstated." Noah did not touch the folder. "Why?" Adrian stared at him. "Because you should never have been fired. That answers why the firing should be reversed. It doesn't answer why you want me back." "Because I was wrong." "About what?" Adrian forced himself to be precise. "About your motive. About what the security breach meant. About you." Noah's expression shifted, but not enough to become forgiveness. "The footage proved my motive." "Yes." "And if the footage had been lost?" Adrian said nothing. Noah leaned back slightly. "If that local camera never existed, what would you believe about me right now?" The question landed harder than accusation. Adrian's first instinct was to explain how reasonable the original evidence had looked. He heard the defense forming and stopped it. Noah watched him do it. "I don't know," Adrian said. "That is the problem." Noah's voice stayed quiet. "You had 3 years of knowing me. The report had 7 minutes. Adrian looked away. "I should have listened." "You did listen. You just decided the parts one couldn't prove mattered less than the parts security could document." Adrian's hand rested on the folder. For the first time, he understood why Noah had not opened it. Reinstatement restored every measurable thing the company had taken. Salary, access, position, reputation. None of those answered the question Noah was actually asking. "What do you want me to do?" Adrian asked. Noah's eyes closed briefly. When they opened, the hurt in them had hardened into something clearer. "Don't make me design the apology that gets you the outcome you want." Adrian went still. "I'm not asking for an apology script. You're asking how to fix this, so I come back." Noah pushed the folder gently toward him. "Those are not the same thing." Adrian looked at the offer between them. "You don't want your job back." "I wanted it 3 days ago." Noah continued before Adrian could answer. 3 days ago, this job was part of how I understood my life. Then you showed me how quickly access, trust, and belonging could disappear when I couldn't give you evidence fast enough. Noah, the camera cleared me this time. Noah met his eyes. "What happens next time there is no camera?" Adrian had no executive answer for that. No policy, no review process, no signature that could guarantee he would never again feel fear, suspicion, or uncertainty. Noah stood. "I'm glad you corrected the record. That mattered." Adrian rose too, but left the folder where it was. "And us?" Noah's face softened for the first time, though the answer did not. "I don't know what us is without the job underneath it." Adrian absorbed that. He had come believing the truth had given him back the power to repair what he broke. He left knowing the opposite. The footage had restored Noah's innocence. The company could restore his career. But Noah no longer needed either of those things to come from Adrian. If Adrian wanted anything more, his goal could no longer be bringing Noah back. It had to become something far harder, learning how to be someone Noah could trust even when there was no evidence available to make trust easy. 3 weeks after Adrian left his apartment, Noah signed a 12-month operations contract with a company that had never once asked him who Adrian Cross was. The job was smaller than the one he had lost. No private elevators. No executive floor. No access code that opened half a building. That was part of why Noah chose it. During the final interview, they had asked what kind of responsibility he wanted next. His answer had surprised even him. "Something I can do well without becoming responsible for one person's entire world." Signing the contract meant admitting what he had avoided since the firing. He was not waiting to go back. Adrian's reinstatement offer was still open, carefully extended without pressure. Noah opened the email one last time and typed, "Thank you for keeping the offer available. I am formally declining it. Please close the position without regard to my return. He hesitated before sending, not because he wanted the job back, but because the message ended the fantasy that reconciliation could simply restore everything to the morning before the accusation. He pressed send. Across the city, Adrian received the copied HR notice 20 minutes later. Noah Bennett has formally declined reinstatement and requested closure of the offer. Adrian sat still behind his desk. For 3 weeks, he had not called, sent another apology, or manufactured a business reason to summon Noah. Beneath that restraint, however, he had preserved one assumption. The job remained waiting if Noah eventually wanted his old life back. The email removed it. HR asked whether the executive operations role should remain unfilled. Adrian could have kept it open and called that patience, but he understood what doing so would mean. One piece of Noah's future would still be arranged around the possibility of returning to him. Adrian typed, "Fill the role through normal process." No special hold. When he sent it, there was no guarantee that surrendering control would bring Noah closer. That was precisely why the decision mattered. That evening, Noah filed away the corrected termination record that cleared his name. It protected his professional future, but it did not answer the personal question left behind. He had a new job. His reputation was clear. He no longer needed Adrian for access, security, or career survival. If Adrian came to him now, Noah's answer would have to be about Adrian alone. At Cross Meridian, Adrian reached the same conclusion from the opposite side. The reinstatement was closed. The record was corrected. There was no professional problem left requiring his involvement. If he contacted Noah again, he could no longer disguise the reason as responsibility. Adrian opened a blank message. His first instinct was to write, "I want you back." He deleted it. Noah was not a position to be restored. He tried, "I need to explain." Deleted that too. Noah had already heard enough explanations. The point was not to find words that guaranteed the outcome. The point was to stop demanding a guaranteed outcome at all. Finally, Adrian wrote, "I would like to see you, if you're willing. Not at the office. Not about the job. If the answer is no, I will understand." He sent it. Noah's phone lit beside the contract that had just made his independence real. He read the message slowly. For the first time since the firing, there was nothing behind Adrian's invitation that Noah needed, which meant the next answer could not be made by fear, loyalty, obligation, or proof. It would have to be his. Noah answered Adrian's message with 4 words. "Tomorrow. 7. My place." Agreeing to see him was not the same as agreeing to forgive him. That distinction mattered now. The next evening, Adrian arrived exactly at 7 with nothing. In his hands, no folder, no reinstatement packet, no company car waiting at the curb. Noah noticed all of it before he stepped aside. "Come in." Adrian entered and stopped near the small dining table where Noah's new contract sat beneath a stack of mail. His eyes rested on it for half a second. "You took the job." "I did." Adrian nodded. "Congratulations." No hesitation. No question about whether Noah could still reconsider Cross Meridian. Something inside Noah loosened, though not enough to call it trust. "You said this wasn't about work." "It isn't." Adrian remained standing until Noah sat first. Only then did he take the chair across from him. Adrian folded his hands on the table. "I spent a long time trying to decide what I could say that would make this easier." Noah's mouth tightened. "And there isn't anything." Adrian looked directly at him. "I was wrong about what you did. The footage proved that. But the part one need to own is what happened before the footage existed." Noah stayed silent. "I had evidence that scared me. I had an explanation from you that was incomplete. And instead of asking whether 3 years of knowing you should change how I handled that uncertainty, I treated uncertainty like guilt." Noah looked down at his hands. He had wanted Adrian to understand that for weeks. Hearing it now did not erase the memory of the red access light in the lobby. "You trusted the report," Noah said. "I did. More than me." Adrian answered without defense. "Yes." The honesty hurt differently than the original accusation. Noah looked back at him. "And what happens if something like that happens again?" Adrian exhaled slowly. "I don't know what the next situation will be. I don't know what evidence I'll have. I don't know whether I'll be afraid. But I know fear is not proof. And I know I do not get to decide who you are before I ask you what happened." Noah felt the old instinct rise. The part of him that wanted to make the conversation easier for Adrian because Adrian was trying. He could say it was enough. He could move toward forgiveness before he was ready. He recognized the instinct this time and did not obey it. I need something from you, he said. Adrian's posture changed, not with tension exactly, but attention. Tell me, if I choose to let you back into my life, I am not coming back to cross Meridian. Adrian nodded. I understand. Not later. Not after this feels better. Not because you find some position where we technically don't report to each other. All right. Noah watched him carefully. You don't get to solve us by rearranging the org chart. Something close to pain crossed Adrian's face, but he did not argue. All right. Noah continued. And if I tell you something is private, you can ask questions. You can tell me you're uncomfortable. You can even tell me you're afraid I'm making a mistake. But you cannot turn uncertainty into a verdict and call that trust. Adrian was quiet for a moment. That is fair. It's not a rule I'm setting because I want to punish you. I know. I'm setting it because I can't go back to being the person who proves loyalty by disappearing inside someone else's needs. The words touched the part of Noah that had once taken pride in absorbing every cost without asking anyone to notice. Adrian's eyes lowered briefly. You protected me when I did not deserve the protection you gave me. Noah shook his head. Don't make that the lesson. Adrian looked up. Then tell me what is. I protected you because I chose to. You fired me because you chose to. Both things can be true. I don't want a relationship where one of us is always the protector and the other gets to decide whether the protection looks loyal enough. Adrian absorbed that without interruption. Then I have one question, he said. Noah waited. Do you want me in your life if I cannot offer you the job back, cannot undo what I did, and cannot guarantee I will never be wrong again? There it was. No authority inside the question. No hidden benefit. No argument disguised as an invitation. Noah could say no and still wake up employed the next morning. His reputation was clear. His future contract was signed. Adrian no longer controlled any practical part of the answer. That freedom frightened him more than dependence had. If Noah said yes now, he could not pretend obligation made the choice for him. It would mean risking trust because he still wanted the man who had broken it once. It would also mean trusting himself enough to leave if Adrian ever demanded self-erasure again. Noah looked at him for a long moment. Yes, he said. Adrian did not move. Noah almost smiled. That wasn't permission to stop listening. A breath of quiet laughter escaped Adrian, small and unsteady. I know. Noah reached across the table, not because Adrian had earned everything back, and not because the past had become harmless, but because the choice belonged to him now. Adrian looked at Noah's hand before taking it, as if even that required permission. Their fingers closed around each other. Noah's new job remained his. Cross Meridian remained behind him. The firing was still part of their history. The footage had proven what Noah had done, but it had not decided this moment. Noah had. Adrian did not stay that night, just because Noah had said yes. When the conversation loosened into silence, he looked at their joined hands and asked, Do you want me to stay? Noah considered what he actually wanted instead of what would make the moment feel complete. Not tonight. Adrian's expression tightened for half a second, but he nodded. All right. He took his coat and left without turning Noah's boundary into a test of affection. Noah closed the door behind him and felt relief without guilt. Nothing had been fixed by pretending the hurt was gone. Nothing had collapsed because he asked for space. Over the next few weeks, Adrian visited when Noah invited him, and Noah learned that closeness no longer had to arrive through an executive calendar. Then one Thursday evening, Noah canceled dinner less than an hour before they were supposed to meet. Something came up at work. I can't explain tonight. I'm sorry. He sent the message and immediately felt his body prepare for the old consequence. Questions, pressure, a demand for details that would prove the cancellation meant nothing personal. His phone lit up. Adrian's reply contained 2 sentences. Do you need anything from me? If not, I'll see you when you're free. Noah stared at the screen. No demand for a name. No request for a timeline. He typed, I'm okay. I just can't discuss it yet. Adrian answered, understood. That was all. 2 days later, after the issue was no longer confidential, Noah explained what had happened. Adrian listened and never once said, You could have told me Thursday. You didn't wonder? Noah asked. Of course I wondered. But you didn't ask. You said you couldn't explain yet. That used to make you uncomfortable. It still does. Adrian paused. Trust is not the absence of discomfort. I'm trying not to turn discomfort into a verdict. Noah smiled before he could stop himself. The answer mattered because it was not another apology. It was behavior. A month later, Noah visited Cross Meridian for the first time since he had left. Not as an employee. Not for reinstatement. Adrian had asked whether he wanted to meet for dinner after work, and Noah had decided he was ready to walk through the building without needing it to belong to him. At reception, he signed in as a guest. The gate opened with a temporary pass instead of his old executive credentials. To his surprise, he liked the difference. Nothing in the building had to recognize him for Adrian to be waiting upstairs. When Noah reached the executive floor, Adrian was finishing one administrative approval. The monitor on his desk showed an archived security record awaiting final classification. Noah recognized the date before the image. The corridor. The timestamp. His own figure frozen near the blind zone. Adrian noticed where he was looking. Records retention flagged it for closure. The misconduct finding was already removed. This is just the final archive status. Beneath the frame, the classification read, Incident closed. No intentional misconduct. Privacy controls restricted. Adrian did not minimize the window or rush to explain it. Do you want me to close it? He asked. Noah looked at the image again. For weeks, one camera angle had seemed powerful enough to define him. Then a wider angle had vindicated him. Now both were simply records of actions. Evidence could show what happened. It could not decide what he meant. Archive it, Noah said. Adrian clicked approval. The frame disappeared from the screen. No ceremony. No deletion of history. Just a closed file. Adrian stood. Ready? Noah nodded. As they walked toward the elevator, Adrian reached for his hand, then stopped before touching him. Noah noticed the hesitation and closed the distance himself. The temporary guest pass rested in his pocket. His old job was gone. His new one remained his. The firing had not been erased, and the footage had not become meaningless. But neither had the authority to choose his future for him. When the elevator doors opened, Adrian did not step inside first and assume Noah would follow. He waited beside him. Noah smiled, took his hand, and entered by choice. For the first time since the night he shut down those cameras, protecting Adrian no longer required sacrificing himself.